Zephyr's 4 arms trembled as the transport shuttle descended toward Earth's surface. Through the reinforced viewport, the blue-green planet looked impossibly bright compared to the cold void of space where they had spent most of their life. The other alien refugees pressed against the windows, chattering excitedly in dozens of different languages, but Zephyr remained hunched in their seat, secondary arms wrapped protectively around their torso. The Galactic Refugee Council had called it a miracle when Earth agreed to accept displaced beings from the war-torn Outer Rim systems. Humans, they said, were surprisingly welcoming for such a young species. They had vast empty spaces, clean water, and, most importantly, it didn't ask too many questions about where you came from or what you had lost. Zephyr touched the small translator device behind their ear, a gift from the Council. It would help them understand human speech and convert their own chittering language into something humans could comprehend. They had practiced basic phrases during the journey, but the thought of actually speaking to one of these strange bipedal creatures made their stomach writhe with anxiety. The shuttle landed with a gentle thud at the processing center outside what humans called New Geneva. Through the speakers, a calm voice announced their arrival in several languages. Zephyr's translator buzzed to life, converting the words into their native tongue. "Welcome to Earth. Please remain calm as we begin the disembarkation process." As the other passengers began gathering their belongings, Zephyr clutched their single bag tighter. Everything they owned fit inside. A few changes of clothing adapted for their unique physiology, a small datapad containing the last messages from their family before the orbital bombardment, and a traditional crystal from their homeworld that had somehow survived the destruction. The line moved slowly toward the exit. Zephyr watched as each refugee was greeted by human officials wearing friendly smiles and speaking in gentle tones. The humans were smaller than Zephyr had expected, with only 2 arms and, strange for growing only on the tops of their heads. Their faces were mobile and expressive, constantly shifting to show emotions. When Zephyr's turn came, they approached the processing station on shaking legs. The human official behind the counter was a middle-aged woman with graying hair and kind eyes. Her name tag read Sarah Collins in several languages. "Hello there," Sarah said warmly. Her voice translated into Zephyr's chittering language through the device. "Welcome to Earth. Can you tell me your name?" Zephyr's throat constricted. They opened their mouth, but no sound came out. The woman waited patiently, her expression understanding rather than irritated. After what felt like an eternity, Zephyr managed to whisper their name. "Zephyr," Sarah repeated, carefully pronouncing each syllable. "That's a beautiful name. It means gentle wind in one of our old languages." "How fitting." She smiled and made notes on her datapad. "I see here that you're unaccompanied. Do you have any family or friends expecting you?" The question hit Zephyr like a physical blow. Family, friends, words that no longer had meaning in their life. They shook their head, unable to meet the human's eyes. Sarah's expression softened with understanding. "I see. Well, that's perfectly fine. We have excellent support systems for unaccompanied refugees. You'll be staying at the Riverside Integration Center for now. It's a lovely place with counselors who specialize in helping people adjust to life here." She handed Zephyr a packet of documents and a small electronic device. "This contains all your temporary identification, housing assignment, and contact information for your caseworker. The device will help you navigate the center and has translation software if your implant malfunctions." Zephyr accepted the items with all 4 hands, nodding silently. "One more thing," Sarah said, leaning forward conspiratorially. "The center has a wonderful garden where many of our residents like to spend time. I think you might enjoy it there. Sometimes a little fresh air and quiet can work wonders." After completing the final paperwork, Zephyr was directed to a waiting area where other newly arrived refugees sat with their assigned escorts. A young human man approached, consulting a datapad. "Zephyr," he asked, pronouncing the name carefully. "I'm David Martinez, your transition coordinator. I'll be taking you to the Riverside Center and helping you get settled in." David was tall and lanky with an easy smile and patient demeanor. He seemed genuinely pleased to meet Zephyr, which was both comforting and overwhelming. As they walked toward the transport vehicles, David maintained a steady stream of gentle conversation, pointing out various features of the facility and explaining what they could expect during their first few days. The center houses about 200 residents at any given time, David explained as they boarded a quiet electric vehicle. We have beings from 47 different species currently, so you won't be the only non-human. The staff is trained in multi-species psychology and cultural sensitivity. Zephyr nodded, watching the human landscape roll by through the window. Earth was so green, with plants growing everywhere in wild profusion. The sky was a brilliant blue that hurt their dark-adapted eyes, and fluffy white clouds drifted lazily overhead. It was beautiful, but alien in every sense. The Riverside Integration Center lived up to its name, situated along the banks of a broad, slow-moving river. The main building was constructed of some kind of light-colored stone with large windows that let in abundant natural light. Smaller buildings were scattered around the grounds, connected by meandering walkways lined with flowering shrubs. The residence halls are divided by atmospheric requirements and gravity preferences, David explained as they pulled up to the main entrance. You'll be in Building C, which houses oxygen-breathing species with Earth normal gravity needs. Your roommate is an Altarian named Kex who's been here for about 3 months. They're very quiet and respectful of privacy. The lobby of the main building bustled with activity. Humans and various alien species moved about their daily business, some in small groups chatting, others reading or working on portable devices. The atmosphere was calm and welcoming, but Zephyr still felt overwhelmed by the sheer number of beings in one space. David led them through the check-in process, introducing Zephyr to key staff members and explaining the center's basic rules and schedules. Meals were served 3 times daily in the main dining hall, with options for various dietary needs. Counseling sessions could be scheduled as needed. Educational and recreational activities were available, but not mandatory. The most important thing to remember, David said as they walked toward Building C, is that you're safe now. There's no timeline pressure here. Some residents move on to independent living within weeks. Others take months or even longer. We're here to support you at whatever pace feels right. Zephyr's assigned room was small, but comfortable, with a bed, desk, storage unit, and large window overlooking the garden Sarah had mentioned. Their roommate Kex was out at the time, but had left a brief welcome note written in multiple languages. I'll let you get settled, David said, placing his contact information on the desk. Dinner is served starting at 6 o'clock human time. That's about 3 hours from now. You don't have to go if you're not ready, but the dining hall is usually quite peaceful during the first seating. After David left, Zephyr sat on the edge of their bed and truly looked at their new surroundings for the first time. Sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating dust motes that danced in the air. Outside, they could see other residents walking along the garden paths, some alone, others in pairs or small groups. The silence felt both peaceful and heavy. For the first time in months, Zephyr wasn't surrounded by the constant hum of spaceship engines or the cramped quarters of refugee transport. They were alone with their thoughts, and those thoughts were not comfortable companions. Images from their homeworld flickered through their mind, their families dwelling overlooking the crystal caves, the sound of their younger siblings' laughter echoing through the tunnels, their parents' gentle touch as they helped Zephyr overcome their natural shyness to participate in community gatherings. All of it was gone now, reduced to radioactive dust by weapons too powerful for any civilized being to comprehend. Zephyr pulled their knees up to their chest, wrapping all 4 arms around themselves in a protective embrace. The translator device behind their ear felt heavy and foreign. Everything about this place was foreign. The gravity was slightly wrong, making them feel perpetually off balance. The air carried strange scents, growing things, and water, and something indefinably human. Even the light from Earth's sun felt different on their skin. A soft chime from the room's communication system interrupted their brooding. A gentle voice announced that dinner service was beginning in the main dining hall. Zephyr considered ignoring it. The thought of navigating a room full of strangers while trying to figure out unfamiliar food was terrifying. But their stomach chose that moment to growl audibly, reminding them that they hadn't eaten since the shuttle's morning meal service. With great effort, Zephyr forced themselves to stand and check their reflection in the room's mirror. Their appearance was neat enough. Their natural chitinous plates were clean and properly arranged, and their clothing was appropriate for the setting. The face looking back at them was gaunt and hollow-eyed, but there was nothing to be done about that now. The walk to the dining hall felt like an epic journey. Other residents passed them in the corridors, most offering polite nods or quiet greetings. A few humans smiled warmly, and one elderly Centaurian female chittered what sounded like a blessing in her native tongue. Everyone seemed kind, but Zephyr couldn't shake the feeling of being utterly alone in a crowd. The dining hall was large and airy, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering views of the river. The space was arranged with tables of various sizes to accommodate different species, social preferences, and physical needs. A serving area along one wall offered an impressive array of dishes, with clear labeling indicating ingredients and dietary restrictions. Zephyr approached the serving area hesitantly. The human staff member behind the counter, a cheerful woman with colorful markings in her hair, greeted them warmly. "First time in the dining hall?" she asked, her tone friendly and encouraging. "Ai Maria. Let me help you find something you'll enjoy." With Maria's patient guidance, Zephyr selected items that looked similar to foods from their homeworld, grains, and vegetables prepared simply, without too many unfamiliar spices. They accepted a cup of something Maria promised was very soothing, like a warm hug for your insides. Finding a place to sit proved to be the next challenge. Most of the smaller tables were occupied by established groups engaged in conversation. The larger communal tables had open spaces, but the thought of sitting among strangers was paralyzing. Zephyr stood uncertainly with their tray, feeling increasingly conspicuous. "Would you like to sit with me?" The voice came from nearby, another human, sitting alone at a small table by one of the windows. They appeared to be middle-aged, with silver-streaked hair and gentle eyes behind simple glasses. A book lay open beside their meal, and they had the comfortable air of someone who genuinely enjoyed their own company. "I'm Dr. Elena Vasquez," the human continued when Zephyr hesitated. "I'm one of the center's counselors, but right now, I'm just having dinner like everyone else. You're welcome to join me if you'd like some quiet company." Zephyr nodded gratefully and settled into the chair across from Dr. Vasquez. The counselor returned to her book, creating a comfortable bubble of shared solitude. Zephyr began to eat slowly, surprised to find that the food was actually quite good, similar enough to home cooking to be comforting, but with interesting new flavors to explore. "How are you finding everything so far?" Dr. Vasquez asked eventually, looking up from her reading. "It's very different," Zephyr managed, their voice barely above a whisper. "Different can be overwhelming," the counselor agreed, "but it can also lead to wonderful discoveries. Have you had a chance to explore the grounds yet?" Zephyr shook their head. "The gardens are particularly lovely this time of year. Many of our residents find them peaceful, and we have some fascinating neighbors. There's a human family that lives just beyond the center's grounds who raises therapy animals. Their dog sometimes visits the gardens with them." "Dog?" Zephyr asked, the word not translating clearly. "Like a domesticated canine," Dr. Vasquez explained. "Humans have formed partnerships with certain animal species over thousands of years. Dogs are companion animals. They live with human families and provide emotional support and friendship. They're quite remarkable creatures." The concept seemed strange to Zephyr. Their own species had never domesticated other animals, preferring to observe and appreciate them from a respectful distance. The idea of deliberately forming emotional bonds with non-sapient creatures was foreign, but somehow intriguing. After dinner, Zephyr returned to their room to find their roommate Kex had returned. The Altarian was a tall, graceful being with iridescent skin and large, multifaceted eyes. They greeted Zephyr politely and inquired about their first day, but seemed to sense their need for quiet and didn't push for extended conversation. That night, Zephyr lay in their unfamiliar bed, listening to the sound of Earth. Through the open window came the gentle murmur of the river, the rustle of leaves in the evening breeze, and, somewhere in the distance, the strange calls of nocturnal creatures. It was so different from the crystal caves of home, where silence reigned supreme except for the musical resonance of the living stones. Sleep, when it finally came, brought dreams of home and family, of voices calling their name through endless crystalline corridors. Zephyr woke several times during the night, momentarily confused by their surroundings before the weight of their new reality settled over them once again. The next morning brought the beginning of their new routine. After a quiet breakfast shared again with Dr. Vasquez, Zephyr decided to take the counselor's advice and explore the gardens. The morning air was crisp and clean, carrying scents of growing things and the nearby river. The gardens were indeed beautiful, laid out in a naturalistic style that seemed to flow organically across the landscape. Paths wound between beds of flowering plants and stands of trees, with benches placed at scenic intervals. Other residents moved quietly along the walkways, some alone, others in small groups, all seeming to find some measure of peace in the green surroundings. Zephyr found a secluded bench near a small pond where aquatic plants floated on the surface and tiny fish darted between the stems. The spot felt private while still being part of the larger garden, perfect for their anxious temperament. They settled into a daily routine of spending their mornings there, sometimes reading from their data pad, sometimes simply watching the play of light on the water. It was during their third morning in the garden that everything changed. Zephyr was sitting in their usual spot, lost in memories of home, when a sound unlike anything they'd heard on Earth reached their ears. It was rhythmic and energetic, a sort of panting mixed with the soft thud of feet hitting the ground. Growing closer, looking up from their brooding, Zephyr saw a most unusual sight approaching along the garden path. A small human child was running toward them, laughing with pure joy. But they weren't alone. Beside them bounded a four-legged creature unlike anything Zephyr had ever seen. The creature was covered in fluffy golden fur that seemed to glow in the morning sunlight. Its tongue hung out of its mouth in what looked like a permanent smile, and its tail wagged with such enthusiasm that its entire rear end wiggled with emotion. Its eyes were bright and intelligent, focused entirely on the running child with obvious devotion. This, Zephyr realized, must be one of the dogs Dr. Vasquez had mentioned. The child spotted Zephyr sitting on the bench and came to an abrupt stop, their canine companion immediately sitting at their feet with perfect obedience. The human child appeared to be perhaps 8 or 9 years old, with unruly brown hair and grass stains on their clothing. "Oh!" the child exclaimed, their voice bright with curiosity rather than fear. "I didn't know anyone was here. I'm sorry if we bothered you. We were just playing fetch." Zephyr stared at the pair, unsure how to respond. The child seemed completely at ease with Zephyr's alien appearance, displaying the casual acceptance that young beings often showed before they learned to be afraid of differences. "This is Buddy," the child continued, placing a protective hand on the dog's head. "He's my best friend. We live just over there." They pointed vaguely toward a cluster of buildings visible through the trees. "Mom said it was okay to play in the gardens as long as we don't bother anyone." The dog, Buddy, had been sitting patiently during this introduction, but something about Zephyr seemed to capture his attention. His head tilted slightly to one side, and his dark eyes fixed on Zephyr with an expression of gentle curiosity. Slowly, carefully, he rose from his sitting position and took a few steps forward. "Buddy, no," the child said quickly. "We should leave the nice alien alone." But Buddy had apparently made up his mind about something. He approached Zephyr's bench with calm confidence, his tail wagging slowly. When he reached the bench, he sat down again and simply looked up at Zephyr with those warm, intelligent eyes. Zephyr found themselves staring back, mesmerized by the creature's obvious friendliness. In all their years of studying other species, They had never encountered anything quite like this. The dog's entire demeanor radiated peace and goodwill, with no trace of the wariness that most wild creatures showed around unfamiliar beings. "I think he likes you," the child said, sounding pleased. "Buddy's really good at knowing when people are sad. Mom says he has a special talent for making friends with anyone who needs one." As if to prove the child's point, Buddy took one more careful step forward and gently rested his head against Zephyr's leg. The contact was warm and comforting in a way that took Zephyr completely by surprise. Without thinking, they reached down with one of their secondary hands and touched the soft fur on top of the dog's head. Buddy's tail immediately began wagging faster, and he pressed closer to Zephyr's leg, clearly enjoying the attention. The simple, uncomplicated affection in the gesture was unlike anything Zephyr had experienced since losing their family. "See," the child said happily, "I knew he'd like you. Buddy's the best judge of character in the whole world." For the first time since arriving on Earth, Zephyr felt something other than anxiety and grief. This small, simple creature had somehow managed to pierce through their emotional barriers with nothing more than gentle presence and unconditional acceptance. As they sat in the morning sunlight, gently stroking Buddy's soft fur while the child chattered happily about their games and adventures, Zephyr began to suspect that their time on Earth might hold possibilities they had never imagined. The child introduced themselves as Sam, and from that first morning encounter, Zephyr's days took on a new rhythm. Every morning after breakfast, they would make their way to the same bench by the pond, and nearly every day, Sam and Buddy would appear for what became their regular playtime in the gardens. At first, Zephyr remained a silent observer, content to watch as Sam threw a worn tennis ball and Buddy bounded after it with inexhaustible enthusiasm. The dog's joy was infectious. His whole body wiggled with happiness each time he successfully retrieved the ball and brought it back to Sam's feet. Sometimes he would get distracted by interesting scents along the way, wandering off to investigate a flower bed or chase a butterfly, but he always returned to the game with renewed excitement. Buddy used to be really scared of everything, Sam explained one morning as they caught their breath after a particularly energetic game of fetch. "When we first got him from the animal shelter, he would hide under the bed whenever strangers came over. But Mom worked with him really patiently, and now look at him." Zephyr studied the confident, friendly dog who was now sprawled in the grass, panting happily. It was hard to imagine this social creature ever being fearful. "What changed?" Zephyr asked quietly, surprised by their own curiosity. Sam's face lit up at the question. It was the most Zephyr had spoken since they'd started meeting in the gardens. "Mom says it was mostly just time and consistency," Sam replied, settling cross-legged on the grass near Buddy, who immediately rolled over to have his belly rubbed. She made sure he felt safe every single day, and eventually he learned to trust that good things would happen. She also got him used to meeting new people gradually, starting with just our family, and then slowly introducing him to neighbors and friends. The child paused in their belly rubbing to look directly at Zephyr. "Mom says trauma can make anyone scared of new things, even when those things might be wonderful. But she also says that with enough love and patience, almost anyone can learn to feel safe again." The words hit Zephyr with unexpected force. They wondered if Sam's mother had been talking about more than just dogs. "Your mother sounds very wise," Zephyr managed. "She's a veterinarian," Sam said proudly. "That means she takes care of animals when they're sick or hurt. She says every creature deserves to feel safe and loved, no matter what they've been through." As the days passed, Zephyr found themselves looking forward to these morning encounters with an anticipation that surprised them. Buddy had taken to greeting Zephyr with obvious delight, his tail wagging so hard his entire body shook with joy. He had also developed a habit of sitting pressed against Zephyr's legs during conversations with Sam, as if he had appointed himself their personal guardian. The simple physical comfort of Buddy's warm presence was something Zephyr hadn't realized they were desperately missing. Their own species was naturally tactile, expressing affection through gentle touches and embraces. The sterile environment of the refugee ships and the well-meaning but professional distance of the center staff had left them starved for the kind of uncomplicated physical comfort that Buddy offered freely. Dr. Vasquez had noticed the change in Zephyr's demeanor during their regular check-in sessions. "You seem more settled lately," she observed during one of their meetings. "Less anxious. Have you found something that's helping you adjust?" Zephyr hesitated, unsure how to explain the profound impact that a child and a dog were having on their emotional state. "There's a human child who plays in the gardens with their companion animal," Zephyr said eventually. "Sam and Buddy. They've been kind to me." Dr. Vasquez smiled knowingly. "Ah, yes. I know Sam and Buddy well. They're practically fixtures in the gardens. Sam's mother, Dr. Sarah Chun, actually volunteers here sometimes. She's helped several of our residents who had companion animals back home, and we're missing that connection." "Companion animals," Zephyr repeated thoughtfully. "My species never formed such relationships." "Many species don't," Dr. Vasquez agreed. "It's a relatively unique aspect of human society. But the bond between humans and animals like dogs has been developing for thousands of years. Dogs have evolved specifically to understand and respond to human emotions. In many ways, they're perfectly designed to provide the kind of unconditional support that can be healing for trauma survivors." The conversation stayed with Zephyr long after the session ended. That evening, they found themselves researching human-animal relationships on their data pad, fascinated by the complex history of domestication and interspecies cooperation that had shaped Earth's development. The next morning brought an unexpected development. Zephyr was settling onto their usual bench when they heard familiar voices approaching. But there were more than the usual two. Sam came into view along the path, with Buddy trotting beside them as always. But following behind was an adult human woman carrying a small bag and wearing the kind of practical clothing Zephyr had learned to associate with people who worked outdoors. "Mom, this is my friend I told you about," Sam announced as they reached the pond area. "This is Zephyr. Zephyr, this is my mom, Dr. Chun." Dr. Chun approached with a warm but respectful smile, stopping at a distance that wouldn't crowd Zephyr, but close enough for comfortable conversation. She was a woman of middle years with kind eyes and graying hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. "It's wonderful to meet you, Zephyr," she said sincerely. "Sam has told me so much about your morning visits. I hope you don't mind that I wanted to introduce myself." Zephyr found themselves nodding, though their anxiety spiked at the unexpected social situation. Dr. Chin seemed to sense their discomfort and settled onto a nearby bench rather than approaching closer. "I brought some treats for Buddy," she continued casually, pulling small items from her bag. "Would you like to help give them to him?" Sometimes dogs form stronger bonds with people when they associate them with good things like treats and play. The suggestion was offered so gently and without pressure that Zephyr found themselves curious rather than overwhelmed. Dr. Chin showed them how to hold their hand flat with the treat on their palm, allowing Buddy to take it with surprising gentleness for a creature with such obvious enthusiasm for food. Buddy's reaction to receiving treats directly from Zephyr was immediate and dramatic. His tail wagging reached new levels of intensity, and he began performing what Sam called his happy dance, a wiggling, spinning display of pure joy that made both humans laugh. "He really does like you," Dr. Chun observed with genuine pleasure. "Buddy's always been a good judge of character, but I've never seen him take to someone quite this quickly." Over the next hour, Dr. Chun proved to be as easy to talk to as her child. She asked gentle questions about Zephyr's homeworld and listened to the answers with genuine interest, sharing her own knowledge of animal behavior and interspecies communication in ways that never felt condescending or overwhelming. "Sam tells me you lost your family," she said eventually, her voice soft with compassion. "I can't imagine how difficult that must be, especially being alone on an unfamiliar world." Zephyr's throat tightened at the direct acknowledgement of their loss. Most people, even the well-meaning counselors at the center, danced around the subject or tried to redirect conversations toward moving forward and building new connections. "It is very hard," Zephyr admitted quietly. "I'm sure it is," Dr. Chen replied simply. Grief doesn't follow timelines or rules. It's different for every being, and there's no right way to process such a profound loss. She was quiet for a moment, watching as Buddy investigated an interesting scent trail near the pond's edge. But I've learned both professionally and personally that connection can be healing even in the midst of grief, she continued. Not as a replacement for what you've lost, but as a reminder that care and affection still exist in the universe. Sometimes that comes from other sapient beings, and sometimes it comes from unexpected sources. As if summoned by the conversation, Buddy abandoned his investigation and trotted over to where Zephyr sat. Without preamble, he placed his head on Zephyr's lap and looked up at them with those warm, trusting eyes. Like that, Dr. Chun said softly, smiling at the display of affection. The morning visit stretched longer than usual, but Zephyr found themselves reluctant to see it end. Dr. Chen had brought a book of her own and settled into comfortable reading while Sam and Buddy played their games. The atmosphere was peaceful and domestic in a way that reminded Zephyr painfully of family gatherings back home, but also provided a glimpse of what belonging might feel like again someday. When it was finally time for the humans to leave, Dr. Chun made a casual suggestion that would change everything. Sam and I often take Buddy for longer walks on the weekends, she mentioned as she gathered her things. Sometimes we explore the trails along the river or visit the meadows beyond the center grounds. You'd be welcome to join us sometime if you'd enjoy getting out and seeing more of the area. The invitation was offered without pressure, but Zephyr could see the hope in both Sam's and Dr. Chen's eyes. Even Buddy seemed to sense the significance of the moment, pressing closer to Zephyr's legs as if adding his own encouragement. I would like that, Zephyr heard themselves saying, surprising everyone, including themselves. Sam's face broke into a brilliant smile, and Dr. Chen nodded with obvious pleasure. Wonderful, she said. How about this Saturday? We usually start around mid-morning. I'll check with the center staff to make sure you're cleared for off-site visits. After they left, Zephyr remained on the bench for a long time, processing what had just happened. In the span of a few weeks, they had gone from being unable to speak to strangers to accepting an invitation to leave the center grounds with humans they barely knew. The change felt both terrifying and exhilarating. That evening, Zephyr mentioned the invitation to their roommate Kex during one of their rare extended conversations. The Chen family has offered to take me on a walking expedition this weekend, Zephyr said, trying to sound casual about it. Kex looked up from their evening meditation with interest. That's wonderful news. Dr. Chun and her offspring are well regarded by many residents, and I've observed that spending time with a canine companion seems to have had a positive effect on your emotional state. Zephyr was continually amazed by Kex's direct but kind observations. Altarians were known for their analytical nature, but Kex had a gift for stating difficult truths in ways that felt supportive rather than clinical. I'm nervous about leaving the center grounds, Zephyr admitted. That's completely understandable, Kex replied. But consider this. You've already made significant progress in managing your social anxiety through your daily interactions with Sam and Buddy. This is simply the next step in that process. Kex paused in their response, seeming to choose their words carefully. I've been observing your daily routine, they continued, and I've noticed that your morning visits to the garden have become the anchor point around which you organize your day. You wake earlier, you eat breakfast more quickly, and you spend less time in what I would characterize as anxious pacing around our shared space. The positive anticipation of seeing your friends has given you something to look forward to. The analysis was accurate, and Zephyr realized that Kex was right. The morning meetings with Sam and Buddy had become more than just pleasant interludes. They were the highlight of each day, the thing that motivated Zephyr to get out of bed and face another day on this strange world. Saturday morning arrived with perfect weather, clear skies, warm sunshine, and a gentle breeze that carried the sense of growing things and fresh water. Zephyr had been awake since dawn, alternating between excitement and terror about the planned expedition. They met Sam and Dr. Chun at the center's main entrance at the appointed time. Buddy greeted Zephyr with his usual enthusiasm, spinning in happy circles before settling into his polite, walking position beside Sam. "I thought we'd start with the river trail," Dr. Chun explained as they set off. "It's mostly flat, and there are plenty of places to rest if needed. Plus, Buddy loves any walk that involves water." The trail led away from the center grounds and into wilder country. Trees grew thicker here, and the river widened into a series of connected pools and gentle rapids. Birds called from the canopy overhead, and small creatures rustled through the underbrush. Everything felt alive and growing in a way that both thrilled and slightly overwhelmed Zephyr. Buddy was in his element, investigating every interesting smell while maintaining awareness of his human companion's location. Occasionally, he would find something particularly fascinating and bring it to show the group. A stick, an unusual stone, once a confused turtle that he carried very gently in his mouth before releasing it back near the water at Dr. Chen's instruction. "He thinks he's helping," Sam explained, laughing as Buddy proudly presented Zephyr with a muddy tennis ball he'd found in the shallows. "He wants to make sure everyone has the same fun he's having." The gesture of sharing his treasures was so purely generous that Zephyr felt their throat tighten with unexpected emotion. This simple creature wanted nothing more than for everyone around him to be as happy as he was. They stopped for lunch at a clearing where the river formed a particularly scenic pool. Dr. Chun had brought sandwiches and water for the humans, while Buddy received his own special traveling meal. Zephyr had packed some of their preferred foods from the center's dining hall. "Tell me about companion animals on your home world," Dr. Chun requested as they ate, her tone conversational rather than probing. "We never had them," Zephyr replied, watching as Buddy finished his meal and then settled in the grass with his head resting across Sam's feet. "My species believes in observing other life forms with respect, but not in forming deliberate bonds. We thought it might be presumptuous to assume other creatures would want our companionship." "That's an interesting perspective," Dr. Chim used, "and certainly respectful. But dogs are actually a special case. They've evolved specifically to partner with humans. They need our companionship as much as we need theirs. It's not presumptuous when both species benefit from the relationship." She gestured toward Buddy, who had fallen asleep in the sunshine, completely relaxed and trusting. "Dogs have an amazing ability to sense emotions and respond appropriately," she continued. "They can detect stress hormones in human sweat, changes in breathing patterns, even subtle shifts in posture that indicate anxiety or sadness. And they instinctively try to provide comfort when they sense distress." As if to illustrate the point, Buddy suddenly lifted his head and looked directly at Zephyr. Without getting up, he began making soft, whining sounds, not distressed, but almost conversational. "What's he doing?" Zephyr asked, fascinated. "He's talking to you," Sam said with a grin. "Buddy makes different sounds for different situations. That's his 'I'm here if you need me' voice." The idea that this creature was actively monitoring Zephyr's emotional state and offering support was both touching and slightly overwhelming. No being had ever paid such careful attention to their well-being, not even their own family members who had loved them dearly. On the walk back to the center, Zephyr found themselves walking beside Buddy, occasionally reaching down to touch his soft fur. The dog seemed to understand that physical contact was comforting and made a point of staying close enough for easy petting while still maintaining his alert supervision of the trail ahead. "Would you like to do this again next week?" Dr. Chun asked as they approached the center entrance. "Yes," Zephyr replied without hesitation, then realized how eager they sounded. "I mean, if it's not too much trouble." "No trouble at all," Dr. Chun assured them. "We enjoy the company, and Buddy has clearly decided you're part of his pack now." That evening, Zephyr sat by their room's window, watching the sun set over the river and reflecting on the day. For the first time since the destruction of their homeworld, they had spent an entire day without thinking about their loss for hours at a time. The simple pleasure of walking in beautiful surroundings with friendly companions had created a bubble of contentment that felt almost like healing. They thought about Dr. Chen's words regarding dogs and their unique ability to provide emotional support. It was true that Buddy seemed to understand Zephyr's needs in ways that even the professional counselors at the center sometimes missed. The dog offered comfort without trying to fix anything, presence without expecting conversation, and affection without any agenda beyond simple friendship. Maybe, Zephyr thought as they prepared for bed, there were different kinds of families than the ones you were born into. Maybe friendship and care could grow in unexpected places, taking forms you never imagined possible. Outside their window, the Earth night was alive with sounds. Insects chirping, night birds calling, and somewhere in the distance, the contented bark of a dog settling down for sleep. For the first time since arriving on this strange blue world, Zephyr fell asleep to the sound of something other than their own heartbeat. The Saturday walks with Sam, Dr. Chun, and Buddy became a weekly tradition that Zephyr looked forward to with growing excitement. Each expedition took them to new areas around the Integration Center, sometimes following different sections of the river, other times exploring meadows filled with wildflowers or wooded trails where ancient trees created cathedral-like spaces dappled with filtered sunlight. But it was the smaller, daily interactions in the garden that truly began to change Zephyr's relationship with their new world. Buddy had developed an uncanny ability to appear whenever Zephyr was having a particularly difficult day. On mornings when memories of home felt too heavy to bear, when the translator device behind their ear felt like a constant reminder of their alienation, or when the simple act of getting out of bed seemed overwhelming, Buddy would somehow sense their distress and provide exactly the kind of comfort needed. Sometimes it was active comfort, bringing Zephyr a stick to throw, or performing his silly happy dance until even Zephyr's grief couldn't resist a small smile. Other times it was passive presence, simply sitting pressed against Zephyr's legs, radiating warmth and unconditional acceptance while they worked through their emotions. I've never seen Buddy bond with anyone this strongly except for Sam. Dr. Chun observed one Saturday as they paused to rest beside a small waterfall. Buddy was lying with his head across Zephyr's feet, having claimed that position as soon as they sat down. He's usually friendly with everyone, but this is different. He's genuinely attached to you. Zephyr stroked the soft fur between Buddy's ears, marveling at how natural the gesture had become. I don't understand why. I have so little to offer him. You're wrong about that, Sam interjected, looking up from the collection of interesting rocks they were sorting through. Buddy doesn't want you to offer him stuff. He just wants you to be his friend. And you pet him and talk to him and throw sticks for him. That's all he needs. The simplicity of Sam's explanation struck Zephyr profoundly. Their own species placed great emphasis on reciprocal obligations and complex social contracts. The idea that friendship could exist without formal agreements or defined expectations was revolutionary. On my home world, Zephyr said slowly, relationships required careful balance. Each individual had to contribute equally, or the social harmony would be disrupted. Dr. Chin nodded thoughtfully. That sounds like a beautiful system for a stable society. But it also sounds like it might be exhausting for individuals who are going through difficult times. The observation was painfully accurate. Zephyr remembered their own struggles with social anxiety as a young person, constantly worried about whether they were meeting their social obligations adequately. Even within their loving family, there had been pressure to participate in community activities and contribute to social gatherings in ways that often felt overwhelming. Here's something interesting about dog psychology, Dr. Chun continued, settling more comfortably on the fallen log they were using as a bench. Dogs don't keep score. They don't love you less if you're sad one day and happy the next. They don't withdraw affection if you can't play as much as usual because you're dealing with grief or trauma. They just adapt to whatever you need and keep offering their presence. As if responding to the discussion about his character, Buddy lifted his head and looked up at Zephyr with that expression of patient devotion that had become so familiar and comforting. It's actually one of the reasons dogs are so effective as therapy animals, Dr. Chen added. They provide consistent emotional support without judgment or expectations. That afternoon brought an unexpected development. As they were preparing to head back toward the center, they encountered another group of walkers on the trail, 3 other refugees from the center, accompanied by one of the human staff members. Zephyr recognized them as residents from their dining hall, though they had never spoken beyond polite nods. The staff member, a cheerful young man named Marcus, greeted Dr. Chen warmly. "Sarah, good to see you out here with your crew. How's the trail today?" "Perfect weather for walking," Dr. Chen replied. "Marcus, I don't think you've met our friend Zephyr officially." The introduction was casual and natural, with no emphasis on Zephyr's usual shyness or reluctance to engage socially. Marcus smiled and nodded respectfully, offering a greeting that acknowledged Zephyr as part of Dr. Chen's group rather than as a patient or client needing special handling. The other refugees, an elderly Centaurian couple, and a young Rigelian who couldn't have been much older than Sam, seemed equally at ease with the encounter. They chatted about the trail conditions and shared observations about the local wildlife before the groups parted ways to continue their respective walks. "That was nice," Sam commented as they resumed walking. "I like meeting people on the trails." "Buddy does too. He always wants to say hello to everyone." Zephyr realized with surprise that the interaction hadn't triggered their usual anxiety. Being introduced as part of Dr. Chen's group, rather than as an isolated refugee needing accommodation, had somehow made the social contact feel natural rather than threatening. "You handled that really well," Dr. Chen observed quietly, falling in a step beside Zephyr. "A few weeks ago, unexpected social situations were quite difficult for you." It was true. The encounter with Marcus and the other refugees would have sent Zephyr into a panic spiral just a month earlier. Now, it had felt almost normal. "I think," Zephyr said slowly, "I felt less alone when you introduced me as your friend instead of as what I usually am." "What do you usually feel like you are?" Dr. Chun asked gently. Zephyr was quiet for several minutes, considering the question as they walked. Buddy trotted beside them, occasionally investigating interesting scents, but always returning to his position near Zephyr's side. "A problem to be managed," Zephyr finally admitted. "Someone damaged and needy who requires special patience and accommodation. A burden that kind people accept because it's the right thing to do." Dr. Chun stopped walking so abruptly that Sam and Buddy had to backtrack to rejoin them. "Zephyr," she said firmly, "I want you to listen to me very carefully. You're not a burden. You're not a problem to be managed. You're a person who has survived something terrible and is working hard to build a new life. That takes incredible courage and strength." Her voice was passionate in a way Zephyr had never heard before, and her eyes blazed with conviction. "More than that," she continued, "you've brought joy into our lives. Sam looks forward to seeing you every single day. Buddy has never been happier than he is during your morning visits. And She paused, seeming to choose her words carefully. "I haven't seen Sam this excited about a friendship since we moved to this area 2 years ago. You've given my child someone special to care about." Sam nodded enthusiastically. "Mom's right. You're not a problem. You're my friend. And Buddy's best friend besides me. Right, Buddy?" Buddy responded by sitting down and offering his paw to Zephyr, a trick Sam had been teaching him that he usually reserved for very special occasions. The gesture was so perfectly timed and sweetly offered that Zephyr felt their eyes fill with tears. They knelt down to accept Buddy's paw, and the dog immediately took the opportunity to give them a thorough face washing with his tongue, which made Sam giggle and even coaxed a laugh from Zephyr. "See," Sam said triumphantly, "Buddy knows you're special. Dogs don't lie about stuff like that." Walking back to the center that afternoon, Zephyr found themselves thinking about identity and belonging in ways they never had before. Their entire sense of self had been built around being part of a specific family, community, and world. When all of that was destroyed, they felt like they had no identity left beyond being a victim and a refugee. But spending time with Sam and Dr. Chun and Buddy was showing them that identity could be more fluid than they had imagined. In their eyes, Zephyr wasn't defined by what they had lost or what they couldn't do. They were simply Zephyr, a friend worth spending time with, someone whose company was actively sought and enjoyed. The shift in perspective was simultaneously liberating and terrifying. If they weren't primarily a victim and refugee, then who were they? What did they want from their life on Earth beyond basic survival and safety? That evening, Zephyr brought up these questions during their regular session with Dr. Vasquez. "I think I'm changing," they said without preamble as soon as they sat down in the counselor's comfortable office. "I'm not sure if that's good or bad." Dr. Vasquez smiled warmly. "Change can be unsettling even when it's positive. What kind of changes are you noticing in yourself?" "I used to spend my days thinking about what I had lost," Zephyr explained. "Now, I find myself thinking about what I might want to do tomorrow. That feels disloyal somehow, like I'm betraying the memory of my family." "Ah," Dr. Vasquez nodded knowingly. "Survivor's guilt. It's incredibly common among refugees, especially those who lost family members. The feeling that moving forward with your life somehow diminishes the importance of those you've lost." She leaned forward slightly, her expression compassionate but direct. "Can I ask you something, Zephyr? When you think about your family, really think about who they were as individuals. Do you think they would want you to spend the rest of your life frozen in grief? Or do you think they would want you to find happiness and purpose again?" The question hit Zephyr like a physical blow, but in a clarifying way rather than a painful one. They thought about their parents, who had always encouraged Zephyr to overcome their natural shyness and engage with the world. They thought about their younger siblings who had looked up to Zephyr and dreamed of exploring the galaxy together someday. "They want me to live," Zephyr said quietly. "They always wanted me to be braver, to try new things, to make friends despite my anxiety. And what do you think they would say about Sam and Dr. Chun and Buddy?" Zephyr smiled for the first time during the session. "They would love them, especially Buddy. My youngest sibling always wanted a pet, but our culture didn't really allow for that kind of relationship. So perhaps," Dr. Vasquez suggested gently, "honoring their memory might mean embracing the opportunities for connection and growth that you're finding here, rather than holding yourself back from them." The conversation stayed with Zephyr for days afterward. Gradually, they began to allow themselves to fully enjoy their time with their human friends without the underlying guilt that had been shadowing even their happiest moments. This newfound emotional freedom had an immediate effect on their interactions. Sam noticed the change right away, commenting that Zephyr seemed lighter and more willing to participate in their games and conversations. Dr. Chin observed that Zephyr's anxiety levels seemed markedly reduced, and even suggested that they might be ready to try some of the center's group activities. But it was Buddy who provided the most dramatic evidence of Zephyr's emotional progress. Dogs, as Dr. Chun had explained, were incredibly sensitive to emotional states, and Buddy had always been somewhat protective of Zephyr, staying close and alert as if monitoring for signs of distress. Now, as Zephyr's anxiety decreased and their natural personality began to emerge more fully, Buddy's behavior shifted from protective to purely playful. He began bringing Zephyr toys during their garden visits, initiating games of tug-of-war with sticks and rope toys that Sam provided. He started performing his most dramatic tricks and stunts specifically for Zephyr's entertainment, clearly delighting in the laughter and applause he received in return. Most significantly, Buddy began including Zephyr in what Sam called the pack. During their weekend walks, the dog would position himself so that he could keep visual contact with all three of his humans, running ahead to scout the trail, but always circling back to make sure everyone was keeping up. He had begun to treat Zephyr as a full member of his family, rather than a visitor who needed special care. The change was noticed by others as well. Kex commented on Zephyr's increased confidence and decreased pacing around their shared room. Other residents in the dining hall began approaching Zephyr for casual conversations, drawn by their more relaxed and open demeanor. Even the center staff remarked on the transformation. "You know," Dr. Vasquez said during one of their sessions, "when you first arrived, you could barely make eye contact with anyone. Now you're initiating conversations and participating in group activities. That's remarkable progress." Zephyr nodded, thinking about how different they felt from the terrified, grief-stricken being who had stumbled off the refugee transport just a few months earlier. I think, they said slowly, I'm learning how to be myself again. Not the same self I was before. That person belonged to a world that doesn't exist anymore. But a new version of myself that can exist in this world. And what is this new version of yourself like? Dr. Vasquez asked with interest. Zephyr considered the question carefully. Braver than I used to be. More willing to trust that good things can happen. Someone who has friends and looks forward to spending time with them. They paused, then added with a small smile, someone who knows how to make a dog happy. That simple statement seemed to encapsulate the entire transformation. The being who had arrived on Earth couldn't imagine forming emotional bonds with anyone, let alone a non-sapient creature from an alien world. Now, making Buddy happy had become one of Zephyr's primary sources of joy and purpose. But the most significant change was still to come, emerging from an unexpected crisis that would test everything Zephyr had learned about courage, friendship, and finding their place in a new world. The crisis began on a Tuesday morning when Sam didn't appear for their usual garden meeting. Zephyr waited on their familiar bench by the pond, watching the path for the familiar sight of a child and dog bounding through the morning sunshine. But as the minutes stretched into an hour, concern began to replace anticipation. Buddy finally appeared alone, which was unprecedented. The golden dog emerged from the tree line at a full run, his usual playful gait replaced by obvious urgency. He ran directly to Zephyr, whimpering and pawing at their legs in clear distress. Buddy? What's wrong? Where's Sam? Zephyr asked, their own anxiety spiking at the dog's obvious agitation. Buddy spun in circles, then ran a few steps back toward the trees before returning to Zephyr. His behavior was unmistakable. He wanted Zephyr to follow him. Without hesitation, Zephyr stood and allowed Buddy to lead them off the familiar garden paths and into the wooded area beyond the center grounds. The dog moved with purpose, frequently checking to ensure Zephyr was following, but maintaining a pace that suggested genuine emergency. They had gone perhaps half a mile when Zephyr heard it, a faint voice calling for help. Sam's voice, coming from somewhere ahead and slightly to the left of the path they were following. Buddy barked once and took off toward the sound, with Zephyr following as quickly as their legs could carry them through the underbrush. They found Sam in a small clearing, sitting at the base of a large tree with their left leg extended at an unnatural angle. The child's face was pale with pain, but they managed a brave smile when they saw Zephyr approaching. I'm okay, Sam said quickly, though their voice was strained. I was trying to get a better look at a bird's nest, and I fell out of the tree. I think my leg might be broken. Zephyr knelt beside Sam, their emergency training from the refugee camps automatically taking over. The leg was definitely fractured, and Sam was showing early signs of shock, pale skin, rapid breathing, and slight trembling. We need to get you medical attention immediately, Zephyr said, pulling out the communication device the center had provided them. But when they tried to contact the emergency services, they discovered they were too far from the center's communication network to get a signal. Buddy came to get you, Sam observed, reaching out to pet the dog who had pressed himself against Sam's uninjured side. Good boy, Buddy. You found help. The praise was weak, but heartfelt, and Buddy whined softly in response, clearly understanding that his human was hurt and needed care. Zephyr's mind raced through their options. Sam needed medical attention, but couldn't walk on the injured leg. Zephyr wasn't strong enough to carry a human child that distance, and leaving Sam alone to go for help seemed dangerous given their signs of shock. Sam, Zephyr said carefully, I need to leave you here with Buddy while I go get help. But first, I need to make sure you stay warm and stable. Drawing on their refugee camp experience, Zephyr carefully positioned Sam in the most comfortable position possible and used their own outer garment to help maintain the child's body temperature. They gave Sam water from the bottle they always carried and spoke calmly about keeping still and breathing steadily. Buddy will stay with you, Zephyr assured Sam. He won't leave your side, and They'll let me know if anything changes when I get back with help. You're really good at this, Sam said weakly. Like a doctor or something. Emergency training from the refugee camps, Zephyr explained briefly. Sometimes people got hurt during the evacuations, and everyone had to know basic medical response. It was the first time Zephyr had spoken about their experiences as a refugee in any detail, but there was no time to dwell on the significance of that revelation. They needed to get help as quickly as possible. I'm going to run back to the center, Zephyr told Sam. It shouldn't take more than 20 minutes. Buddy, stay with Sam. Guard. Buddy seemed to understand the command perfectly, positioning himself where he could keep watch on both Sam and the surrounding area. His playful demeanor had been replaced by alert protectiveness that reminded Zephyr that dogs had originally been bred as working partners rather than just companions. The run back to the center was the longest 20 minutes of Zephyr's life. Their enhanced physiology allowed them to maintain a pace that would have been impossible for a human over that distance. But every step felt agonizingly slow when measured against Sam's need for medical care. They burst through the main entrance of the center still at a dead run, startling the staff members in the lobby. Emergency! Zephyr gasped, still trying to catch their breath. Human child injured in the woods. Broken leg. Need medical evacuation now. The response was immediate and efficient. Within minutes, a medical team was assembled and a transport vehicle was prepared. Zephyr led them back to the clearing, maintaining radio contact with the center to coordinate the rescue effort. They found Sam conscious but clearly weakening, with Buddy maintaining his vigilant guard position. The medical team quickly confirmed Zephyr's assessment, a clean break of the tibia that would require surgical repair, but wasn't life-threatening with proper treatment. As the medical team worked to stabilize Sam for transport, Buddy remained pressed against the child's side, providing comfort and warmth. Only when Sam was securely on the stretcher did the dog finally allow himself to relax slightly, though he never left the immediate area. Can Buddy come with us to the hospital? Sam asked weakly as they were being loaded into the transport. I'm afraid not, sweetheart, one of the medics replied gently. But your friend here can bring him to visit once you're settled. Sam looked at Zephyr with trusting eyes. You'll take care of Buddy until I'm better? And bring him to see me? Of course, Zephyr replied without hesitation. We'll both be there as soon as they allow visitors. After the transport left for the hospital, Zephyr found themselves alone in the woods with Buddy for the first time. The dog was clearly distressed by Sam's absence, whining softly and pacing around the clearing where his human had been hurt. Come on, Buddy, Zephyr said gently, kneeling down to the dog's level. Sam is going to be fine, but they need medical care that can only happen at the hospital. We need to go back and wait for news. Buddy looked up at Zephyr with those expressive brown eyes, and something passed between them, a moment of complete understanding and mutual trust. The dog had chosen Zephyr as Sam's protector during the emergency, and now he was accepting Zephyr's leadership in Sam's absence. They walked back to the center together, Buddy staying close to Zephyr's side in a way that felt both protective and needing protection. When they reached the gardens, instead of heading toward the main building, Zephyr led Buddy to their usual bench by the pond. We'll wait here, Zephyr told the dog. This is Sam's favorite place, and mine too. It feels right to wait for news here. Buddy settled beside the bench with a heavy sigh, resting his head on his paws, but keeping his ears alert for any sounds that might indicate Sam's return. Zephyr sat beside him, running their fingers through his soft fur in the soothing rhythm they had learned he enjoyed. The next few hours were among the longest in Zephyr's memory. Various center staff members stopped by to check on them and provide updates from the hospital. Dr. Chin had been contacted at work and was with Sam during the surgery. The procedure was going smoothly, and Sam was expected to make a full recovery. As the afternoon wore on, other residents of the center began to arrive at the garden, drawn by news of the emergency. Word had spread that Zephyr had found Sam and coordinated the rescue, and many wanted to express their gratitude and concern. That was incredibly brave, said Marcus, the staff member they had met on the trail weeks earlier. Running through the woods alone, staying calm in a medical emergency, organizing the rescue response. That took real courage. Zephyr found themselves at the center of attention in a way that would have terrified them just months earlier. But somehow, sitting in their familiar spot with Buddy beside them, the social interaction felt manageable rather than overwhelming. They were able to accept the praise graciously and answer questions about Sam's condition with steady confidence. The emergency training from the refugee camps, Dr. Vasquez observed when she arrived to check on them, it sounds like that experience, difficult as it was, prepared you to help Sam today. It was true. The skills Zephyr had learned during the darkest period of their life had been exactly what was needed to help their friend in crisis. There was something profoundly meaningful about being able to transform their trauma into effective action that protected someone they cared about. As evening approached, Dr. Chen finally arrived from the hospital with news. Sam was out of surgery and resting comfortably. The break had been repaired successfully, and while they would need several weeks in a cast followed by physical therapy, they were expected to recover completely. "They're asking for you," Dr. Chun told Zephyr with a smile. "Both of you, actually. The hospital has agreed to allow a visit from Buddy. They have a therapy animal program, so they understand how important it is for Sam to see their dog." Buddy seemed to understand that they were talking about Sam, his tail beginning to wag for the first time since the morning's crisis. The hospital visit was emotional for everyone involved. Sam was groggy from the anesthesia, but alert enough to be overjoyed at seeing Buddy and Zephyr. The dog was remarkably gentle, seeming to understand instinctively that his human was fragile and needed careful treatment. "You saved my life," Sam said seriously, holding Zephyr's hand with surprising strength. "Mom told me what you did, running for help, organizing the rescue team, staying calm when everything was scary. You were like a real hero." The words made Zephyr's throat tight with emotion, but it was Dr. Chin's quiet comment afterward that truly affected them. "I don't know what we would have done without you," she said as they prepared to leave the hospital. Sam could have been out there for hours before anyone found them. The fact that Buddy knew to come get you, and that you had the skills and courage to respond appropriately, it made all the difference. She paused, then added, "I hope you realize that what you did today wasn't just about emergency training or crisis response. It was about love. You acted to protect Sam because they matter to you, because they're part of your family now." Family. The word resonated through Zephyr's mind during the quiet drive back to the center. They had spent so long thinking of family as something that was lost forever, something that could only exist in the specific form they had known on their homeworld. But sitting in DR, Chin's vehicle with a sleeping dog curled up against their legs, thinking about the child recovering in the hospital who had called them a hero, Zephyr began to understand that family might be more about choice and commitment than biology and tradition. That night, for the first time since arriving on Earth, Zephyr didn't dream about their lost homeworld and destroyed family. Instead, they dreamed about tomorrow, about visiting Sam in the hospital, about teaching Buddy new tricks to entertain his recovering human, about the moment when they could all be together in the garden again. They were dreaming, Zephyr realized upon waking, about their future rather than their past. And that future looked surprisingly bright. 3 months after Sam's accident, Zephyr stood in front of the mirror in their new apartment, adjusting the formal clothing they had chosen for today's ceremony. The reflection looking back at them showed a being transformed, confident posture, bright eyes, and an expression of anticipation rather than anxiety. The apartment was small, but comfortable, located just a few blocks from DR. Chin's veterinary clinic, where Zephyr now worked as a rehabilitation assistant for animals recovering from trauma and injury. The job had emerged naturally from their experience with both emergency medical response and their intuitive understanding of anxiety and recovery processes. "You ready for this?" asked Kex, who had arrived early to help Zephyr prepare for the day's events. The Altarian had become not just a roommate, but a close friend, and they had chosen to move into adjacent apartments when they both graduated from the Integration Center's residential program. "I think so," Zephyr replied, smoothing down their formal tunic. it still feels surreal. Today was the official ceremony where Zephyr would receive their permanent residency status on Earth, along with recognition for their heroic actions during Sam's rescue. But, more importantly, it was the day Dr. Chun had chosen to make an offer that would change everything about Zephyr's future. The morning began at the government building downtown, where a small crowd had gathered for the citizenship ceremony. Sam was there, walking confidently on their fully healed leg, with Buddy sporting a special ceremonial collar for the occasion. Dr. Chun stood with them, beaming with pride, as Zephyr joined the other refugees being recognized for their contributions to their new communities. The ceremony was simple but moving. Officials spoke about the courage required to start over in a new world and the valuable perspectives that refugees brought to human society. When Zephyr's name was called, the recognition specifically mentioned their quick thinking and medical knowledge that had saved Sam's life, as well as their ongoing work helping traumatized animals recover from their own losses. Zephyr has demonstrated the very best of what interspecies cooperation can achieve, the presiding official announced. They have not only built a new life for themselves on Earth, but have actively contributed to making our world a better place for all beings. As Zephyr accepted their permanent residency documentation, they could see Sam jumping up and down excitedly in the audience while Buddy wagged his entire body in sympathetic enthusiasm. The sight made them laugh out loud with pure joy, a sound that would have been unimaginable during their first terrifying weeks on Earth. After the official ceremony, Dr. Chun had arranged a celebration lunch at a restaurant with outdoor seating that welcomed both humans and their animal companions. The gathering included staff from the Integration Center, Zephyr's co-workers from the veterinary clinic, and several of the other refugees who had become friends during Zephyr's time at the center. But it was during the quiet moment after the meal, when most of the group had moved inside for coffee and dessert, that Dr. Chun made her life-changing proposal. "Zephyr," she began, settling into the chair beside them while Sam played fetch with Buddy in the restaurant's small garden area. "I have something important to discuss with you." Zephyr turned to give Dr. Chun their full attention, curious about her serious tone. "You know that my practice has grown significantly since you started working with us," Dr. Chun continued. "Your gift for understanding and helping animals with trauma has been remarkable. Many of your patients recover faster and more completely than we would typically expect." This was true. Zephyr had discovered an unexpected talent for animal rehabilitation, particularly with creatures who had suffered abandonment, abuse, or other traumatic experiences. Their own journey through loss and recovery seemed to give them insights into the healing process that even experienced veterinarians found valuable. "I've been offered an opportunity to expand the practice," Dr. Chen explained. "There's funding available to create a specialized trauma recovery center for animals, not just medical treatment, but long-term rehabilitation and placement services. It will be the first facility of its kind in this region." Zephyr nodded, wondering where this conversation was leading. "I want you to be my partner in this venture," Dr. Chen said directly. "Not just as an employee, but as a co-director of the rehabilitation program. You would have your own office, your own team of assistants, and complete authority over treatment protocols for trauma recovery." The offer was so unexpected and generous that Zephyr could only stare at Dr. Chun in shock. "But I'm not a trained veterinarian," Zephyr protested. "I don't have formal credentials in animal psychology or rehabilitation therapy." "You have something better," Dr. Chun replied firmly. "You have lived experience with trauma and recovery, combined with a natural ability to understand what animals need to heal. Those credentials can't be taught in school. They come from surviving your own darkness and finding your way back to the light." She paused, watching as Sam and Buddy played together in the garden, both of them periodically checking to make sure the adults were still nearby. "Besides," Dr. Chen added with a smile, "we can arrange for you to complete formal certification programs if you want them. The funding includes educational support for staff development." Zephyr looked out at Sam and Buddy, thinking about the journey that had brought them to this moment. 6 months ago, they had been unable to speak to strangers without panic. Now, They were being offered the opportunity to build a career around helping other traumatized beings find their way to recovery. There's one more thing, Dr. Chen said quietly. This offer comes with a personal component, as well as a professional one. Zephyr looked at her questioningly. Sam has been asking for months when you're going to officially become part of our family. Dr.